One of the most complicated aspects of being a designer is finding and keeping quality clients. We all get into this for the love of one thing, and that's creating, and then one day it happens. We end up working with a client who makes us do countless late night revisions, disrespects our craft, or even brings us to the brink of quitting. At the end of the day though, the blame doesn't all fall on the client. There are some awesome clients out there, and there are some systems we can use to set ourselves up for success and get the best out of our design career. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down 8 ideas you can live by to start getting better clients and have fun designing along the way. So I recently read this book called The Win Without Pitching Manifesto, and in this book, the author Blair Enns breaks down these 12 proclamations he uses for success at his design agency. There are 8 that I specifically liked and I wanted to elaborate on and apply to us solo designers. The first one is we will specialize. Specializing is a great way to position us, the designer, as the expert in the engagement and puts power back into our hands when negotiating with the clients. If the client can go to anyone, you haven't done a good enough job at showing why you are the right option. Being an expert on the subject is one of the only valid ways to differentiate yourself from the competition. When there are too many alternatives to hiring you, the client's able to dictate the price and control the relationship. These days, I feel like my specialty is not only with art direction and brand identity stuff, but I've learned a lot about social media over the past few years so I can add value to my client even after the design work is done. The benefit to specializing is it positions you as the expert on the subject and the client will trust you. The whole customer is always right thing doesn't really apply to the design field. Lastly, if you're worried about specializing because you don't want to work on the same type of thing all the time, I get that. But when you specialize in your client work, it frees you up to explore a bunch of other stuff on your own time and in your personal practice. I do all kinds of stuff that I post on Instagram that still allows me to be creatively fulfilled in my own time, but generate income through my client work. The second one is we will replace presentations with conversations. I know this one kind of sounds weird, and it sounded weird to me at first, but as I read into it more, it started to make sense. As designers, we're so in love with this big presentation that we end up doing it for free. We all have ourselves or has known someone who's put a bunch of work into a proposal or a presentation just for the client to end up ghosting you. If we start creating proposals and presentations before the client has officially committed to us, it keeps the back and forth just to calls and emails and allows us to not overinvest ourselves. This also applies to moments and phases throughout the project. When we switch from this presenting style to a more collaborative and conversational workflow, client relationship is better and it's a win-win for everyone. When talking with the clients, it's important to agree on the strategy at the very beginning of the project, so you have this idea to call back to in case they stray away from some of the original goals. It's also important to always value our clients' input, but in exchange for that open flow of conversation, they need to give us the freedom to execute on the ideas how we see fit. At the end of the day though, you can't always be free from the presentation, so here are a few tips when you have to. Only you, yourself as the designer, presents the work. You know the best way to talk about the concepts and the design thinking, so try your best not to let other employees or other people within a company present your work without you being there. Another one I like to live by is the fewer options you give them, the better. This shows that you have confidence in your ideas and prevents the client from Frankensteining a bunch of concepts you presented together into one messed up thing. So presenting at the end of the day is sometimes inevitable, but the goal is to be free of the need to present. We will diagnose before we prescribe. This one is huge and kind of ties into the last topic. As designers, we're always doing work before there's a clear strategy and the agreement between the client and designer has been made. Clients come to me all the time saying they need this when they really need that. When we diagnose the client's problem and work with them on figuring out the best design solution, the entire project from the very beginning will go a lot smoother. It's important for the client to trust you and be on the same page before any actual designing happens. When there's a miscommunication or we're not aligned with the client, this is when the dreaded revisions start to pile up. Don't get me wrong, sometimes the clients just suck and I try my best to avoid working with those people in the first place. But other times the resentment that builds from a difficult client or too many revisions is just as much our fault as it is theirs. If these issues are figured out in the beginning, it lessens the chance of them happening and prevents you from running into some of these roadblocks. A good client will give you creative control, but only once they have the confidence that you're the expert on the subject and you properly diagnose the problem before you offer them a solution. We will rethink what it means to sell. As designers, we're still salespeople. This doesn't mean we're pushing products around though or offering subscriptions to clients, but we are selling our ideas and the execution of them. Just like any sales job, we need marketing, and our greatest marketing tool as designers is inspiration. We can inspire our future clients just by simply putting our work out into the world. When prospective clients see our work online, they may not contact us right at that minute, but now you're on their radar, and when they're sitting around thinking, I need a designer, maybe they'll think of you. A lot of my freelance work has honestly came just from posting stuff on social media. I do a lot of personal projects that I post on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, etc. This is kind of a win-win because it potentially puts you in front of clients, and even when it doesn't, it allows you to sharpen your skills and express yourself creatively through designing personal passion projects. On the other side of this, it's also important not to oversell yourself. You want to seem interested in a project, but not too overly eager where a client can take advantage of you. Lastly, you got to know when to walk away when a conversation brings up any red flags. I'll go over some of these red flags later in the video when we're talking about being selective and conversations around money. This next one is we will do with words what we used to do with paper. This one kind of speaks back to one of the earlier ideas of over-investing yourself and doing so much work before the client is committed. We've been conditioned to think we need to make proposals and mood boards and all this stuff before the client even commits to working with us. We should try to only talk to clients verbally or through messages, email, and all that until they commit to us, and the first document we create for them should be the contract. The client should want to come to us for our expertise, and spending too much time on the project beforehand kind of devalues the perception of our work, our ideas, and our time. I did a whole video about contracts a while back. You can check that one out. I'll link it in the description below. In reality, no is the second best answer we can hear. When something isn't going to work out, we want to hear that early. That way, we're not wasting time on prospective clients who weren't that serious in the first place. Also, what's stopping the client from taking your ideas and bringing them to another or cheaper designer to execute on? Any client has the right to change their mind, so don't do any work until you've been paid, or at the very least, your upfront deposit. Be confident with this too. You shouldn't feel guilty about being a responsible business person. I'll end this section with this. Doctors charge for MRIs, lawyers charge for discovery, and mechanics charge for diagnosing work or checkups. Us designers should also charge for our ideas and diagnostic work as well. All right, I know this is one that I've struggled with, and a lot of you probably have as well, but we will address issues of money early. If financials are going to be a problem on a project, you want that figured out right away. Trust me. I've been in my own terrible situations and know many horror stories from my friends about not getting paid by clients. The main problem with money comes not from just talking about it, but the fear of wanting to talk about it and the stress and the kind of buildup of being worried to ask about it when you're just talking about the creative details. If you bring it up early and often, it creates no confusion for later on when you're really trying to get paid on that invoice. One important rule too, I think, is to have a minimum price of engagement. These days, I usually set that around like $500 for smaller projects like posters and stuff for friends. There are obviously some exceptions, but for me, that's been a good baseline. If you do discount your price though, and you want to help someone out for whatever other reason, try to make sure to document that in the invoice. If you normally charge $1,500 for a logo and you're doing it for $1,000, write that in the invoice so that way later they can't reference that price as what you normally charge for. You can also use discounted or free projects to work on new skills, and there are many things you can gain from doing a project, not just money. My idea of a good project satisfies at least two of these three things. Project pays well, you learn something or acquire new skills, or you make connections and work with cool people that you look up to. We will be selective. This one's important, and I know how nuanced it can be. I've been freelancing long enough where I can start to be selective, but I know the grind early on, and sometimes you got to take the clients you can get. However, as you gain more knowledge and grow your skills, the client pool becomes not a question of quantity, but quality. When talking with prospective clients, you should be able to tell from the first sentence or two if this project's going to work and this is going to be a good person you enjoy collaborating with. I know though, sometimes it can be hard from first impressions to tell if a client relationship's going to work. I'm not always right, so here are a few red flags I've noticed in the past. Asking about revisions before any work's even started, asking for a discount or to lower your price right away, not wanting to use paperwork like invoices or contracts, and then bad mouthing other designers or creatives. This last one is simple but very valuable. We will charge more. As you get better as a designer, you should always be raising your prices to reflect that. This mantra also applies to working with larger clients. A larger client is the opposite of a friend you give a discount to. They have the capital to pay you more, not only because of the size of their company, but because what you give them is worth more as the company scales up. Your design services have a larger dollar value to a larger client, so make sure the price reflects that. I know it can be scary sometimes to try to charge more and you risk losing clients by raising your prices. However, if you aren't losing clients based on price here and there, then you're probably not charging enough. As designers, we gotta look out for each other, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. If you want to learn how to make some money without clients as a designer, you can check out this video here. That's it for now, and I'll see you next time. Peace.